When I first started this channel, it was supposed to be about how I designed my layout using AnyRail. I showed you the track plan I was going to use, and I wanted to show you how I took the image and then added track over that image and how I was going to make changes to the original plan. Well, the direction of the channel sort of changed and morphed into a full-blown tutorial series, but I still want to show you my railroad design. I initially started with this plan, and I touted the fact that it had a twice around the room main line and it had a hidden staging yard. Now I got pretty far into the design of this railroad, but my interest changed a bit as I started coming up with a backstory for my railroad. That was something I had never done before, and I found it to be a lot of fun. So I gave my railroad a purpose to exist. It would now be based on the Southern Pacific in the Central Valley of California in the late 1970s to the very early 1980s. I wanted to have a sugar beet loading facility, and the cars would then be dragged out of sight to a mythical processing plant that existed somewhere in my railroad's universe. I also wanted to base the railroad around the fictional town of Tucker, California. Now, I named the town after one of my cats who died way too young from heart failure. The town of Tucker would be home to the fictional retro encabulator plant. Now, this plant is the largest manufacturer of retro encabulators in the world, and of course everyone needs a retro encabulator or two in their home. So why not have the plant be based in Tucker, California? So I envisioned a plant that would need to ship out their product by rail, but would also manufacture everything on site. They would make their own cabinetry, they would have a glass works for building cathode ray tubes, etc., etc. It's kind of like what I think the RCA plants were like in the 1950s. Then I added some additional industries, but I don't quite know what they will be yet. I also moved Sparta Electronics from their home on Florin Perkins Road in Sacramento to Tucker. Why? Well, it's because I like Sparta broadcast products, and maybe the folks in charge of the city of Tucker gave Sparta a tax break over what Sacramento could offer. Now, Sparta never had rail service in the real world that I know of, but hey, in my world, they're a much bigger outfit. So I couldn't quite figure out how to fit all of that into the original track plan, and after careful consideration, I decided to simplify the design somewhat, and here's what I came up with. So here's the start of my new design. I took a published track plan and I stretched it to fill the space that I had in my room. Now this is just a simple oval with an island in the middle, but it does offer a lot of switching for industries. Now, I still do not want an engine service area, so I'm going to remove the track up here. And I think maybe I'll add some more buildings to indicate that there is a town there. So now here's the main line as I envision it. Up here in this area, I have a small yard so that the Southern Pacific can drop off and pick up cars for the retro encabulator plant. Down here at the bottom, I have all the industries that live in the town of Tucker, and over here in the corner is my Sparta Electronics plant. Now, I was not happy with the track arrangement up here in the island section. I wanted something a bit more complicated, and I found a small switching layout in one of my books, and I overlaid the image up here. Now, this looked pretty good, but since I was allowing for 30-inch wide aisles all the way around, I decided to make this section here a bit longer, and here is the track leading to the plant. I have also decided that since there is so much traffic in and out of the retro encabulator plant, there will be an SW1200 permanently assigned to the plant to run between the yard and handle switching duties. Now, is this overkill? Maybe, but it should add some fun to the railroad operations. So then I needed a place to load sugar beets. Now, initially, I was going to use this track right here, but after a couple of friends politely told me I was crazy for tying up my passing sided, I added this track. Now I could leave cars out here to be loaded with sugar beets and not tie up any part of my main line. So then I decided to work on my bench work outlines and try to maintain my 30-inch aisle width. And here is the outline. Now I know it's really hard to see. Now I added a bit of depth to the bench work here, here, and here. And then I put in the dimensions and found that in order to get the sugar beet loading area and its buildings in, I needed to go to 26 inches of aisle width in this area, but that's not a real deal breaker. But I still wanted some hidden staging. I needed to bring trains in and make those sugar beet cars go away. Now this was the hardest part. Now this is not a big room, and the only places I could break the track to go into the staging areas was over here and over here. And these 2 points are pretty close together, and I wanted 6 inches between the top level and the staging level. Now I figured that these tracks that lead into the staging areas here and over here, I could have them disappear behind a small rise or tree or other kind of view block. So let me turn off the main line and track plan images. Now it turned out that I could work in 3 staging tracks with a decent radius. But my tracks leading down to the staging yard, we're going to have a 3.6% grade. Now they're not long staging tracks, but they should work for me because I'm not planning on running any trains that are longer than, say, 10 cars. Now also because it's such a short run into and out of the staging tracks, I have a bit of grade also on the staging tracks themselves. But I'm not worried about this because I'll never have cars sitting on any of these tracks without an engine attached. So let's take a look at the whole thing. And this is what I have so far. My small yard up here, the retro encabulator plant. Then down here I have all of the industries of Tucker and my sugar beet loading area over here. Now I put in a small stream over here. I don't know if that's going to stay there, but it looks kind of interesting. Over here, I figured why not? I'm going to put in a small self-standing tower for an AM radio station and also their transmitter building. Now, as for grades, as you can see, there's not much going on here. This area down here is pretty much at 5 inches. This area up here is at 6 inches. And then there's a slight grade here coming up to the retro encabulator plant. And then everything up here is at 7 inches. Now, entry to the railroad will be a duck under over here. Now, in a few years, a duck under may not be that great of an idea, but as of right now, I can still crawl on the floor fairly well. In fact, I have to be able to crawl on the floor fairly well because I have 2 young granddaughters running around the house. I currently have all of the track I need, and I just need to do a few things like clean out the room, add carpeting, put in new lighting, paint the walls, put in new window blinds, and then I think I should be ready to build. Well, thank you for letting me share this with you. Okay, coming up in my next videos, we are going to start adding scenery to the design. I'll talk about how I think that can be done in AnyRail. Now, since I am not an artist, it's going to be amusing to see what I come up with. We'll see you then.